Hello, everybody. It is Tuesday, December 29th, 2020. I am Perrin Lovett, and welcome back to Prepper Post News, courtesy of Freedom Prepper. Hello to everybody at fp.com, freedompreppercommunity.com, all of our viewers at YouTube, and everybody listening at Anchor or Spotify or wherever the podcast is found. And this is a bit of a follow-up from yesterday's feature, which of course was all about the unfolding developments over the weekend from the Christmas morning bombing in Tennessee. And again, this episode is being shot a bit early, so you'll probably have found out more information. I know I find out more and more by the hour, but nothing that I think I'm going to find out is really going to change what I'm about to say. It smells like everything else in this wonderful country in this wonderful year of 2020. It just smells like another big hoax. And I think I have a theory, and I'm going to explain that. But just remember this. In all of these major stories, whether they're real, fake, important, or otherwise, there's always an official narrative that comes out. And we know from experience that the official story, at least as it's first put forward, is always wrong. And we may not ever know what is right. And most of these stories get swept away and nobody remembers them anyway. But the one thing we know is that whatever they put forward and they adopt it as their narrative and they keep preaching it. And you know some examples of this. And I'm going to tell you some examples. It's always wrong. And sometimes it is ridiculously wrong. And I think we have another case of that. But think about it. The beginning of 2020. What's the biggest story of the year? Oh, and by the way, I shot a top 10 countdown, and I guess I need to go ahead and have that edited onto the end of one of these. I wasn't really happy with it. Not really great happy subjects, but I'll either redo that or post the one I have or just skip into 2021 and more hoaxes. But the big story of this year started, you'll remember this, somebody, we don't know who, ate a raw bat head sandwich at a seafood joint in Wuhan, China, and all of a sudden the world came to an end. Now, 40, 50 years ago, small school children in America would have rolled on the floor laughing at that. They oh, that's funny. Tell us another one. But everybody go, oh, well, we guess we shouldn't eat raw bats. Well, first of all, what do bats have to do with seafood? Do bats, swim around in the ocean? No. And, Eastern diets are a little different than ours, but they cook their food. It didn't happen, and the story changed rapidly, and then one thing built upon the other. But remember, that's what they were telling us. They told us that, they tell us that vaccines are perfectly safe. You don't need a warning about infertility. The fact that Justin Trudeau, in or out of blackface, I don't know, is setting up a compensation fund, that means nothing. Thalidomide was just a funny word that Billy Joel made up for a song. Put your memories to rest. It's always, we were attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin. Every single the main, despite the fact that the explosive force went out from a boiler, obviously, instead of in from a mine. Well, it hit a mine. We've got to go to war. It's always a flock of birds. Tower 7 just happened to fall. Don't remember that. It's always the same. And now they're coming out with this idea. This bombing that we want you to forget about this week, for some reason, this bombing is the work of one old 63-year-old loner boomer who's crazy, and he was afraid of 5G. He bought into all the fear-mongering about 5G, and that's why he decided to bomb AT&T. And just forget about it. Won't ever happen again. We don't need to ban RVs. There's no RV control. We don't need common sense recreation vehicle, laws. We don't need to make propane tanks a class 3 weapon. Just forget about it. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. And I did a lot of looking this year for FP at 5G. And I even sat down with a guy who works for the Signal Corps, U.S. Army, in the shadow of a 5G transceiver on a tower. And we talked about it. And, he says, look, the waves are very tight. They may have other purposes, but they're not dangerous to us. Get over it. It's so weak, it's barely, our phones will barely pick it up here. But what if this guy was, and he may have been a kook who was worried about 5G. But there's, in all of these stories, before you can accept what they say on the face, you've got to look at all the coincidences. And a coincidence is supposed to be some random happening that it just happened. We can't explain it. In all of these stories, all of them, you have coincidence on top of coincidence on top of coincidence. The Boston Marathon bombing, the key eyewitness that knew everything. Just a coincidence. He happened to go crazy and throw a chair at the FBI agents, and that's why they shot him, and we'll never hear what he had to say. Las Vegas. We don't know. We'll let Internal Affairs investigate this largest mass shooting in modern history, and come up with nothing. Nobody saw anything on a camera. Yeah, we let the girlfriend leave the country and then come back, and there's all these questions swirling. Coincidence, we'll put it to rest. Pulse nightclub, okay, it was ISIS, but it wasn't really ISIS. His own dad was saying it was ISIS, and, he apparently frequented that club before because he was gay, but, we'll just cover it all, it'll all just go away. Well, in this story, this guy, I found this, I posted some of this at the forum Saturday when I first found it. The mainstream is even on this. I've got some stories linked up. This guy had a house in Antioch, Tennessee, which is just south of Nashville proper, down I-24, a few miles from downtown. And that's where the RV was. But I noticed when I did a quick check of the property records, it had a new owner. As of November 25th, it had been sold to a, what's her name? Michelle Swing of Los Angeles. And I just caught Los Angeles. Who is this woman? Why is it there's always a California connection? We know that Ben Shapiro is fleeing the wreck he made in California, coming to Nashville. Well, you look a cursory search of her. She works for an entertainment company that does concerts, things like audio production, audio, loudspeaker, messages being communicated. And she, from LA. Now, was she living there? We don't know. We do know that he transferred the house to her via quitclaim deed for $0. He gave her the house. And allegedly, she didn't even know about it. They interviewed her. She said, I had no idea. But she did know that there was an obscure Tennessee law that a lot of states have, whereby you can give somebody a house and the grantee doesn't even have to know about it. But then we found out, and what a coincidence. Isn't that funny? Another person from LA, and I don't know anything about her, except that she's in LA and she works in the entertainment business, according to the internet, allegedly. And she gets this house for free that she doesn't know about, except she does know the law. Oh, she has a little connection to Tennessee. We're not going to get into that. Oh, wait. He also transferred her another house the same way, gave her another house just down the road in January of 2019. Okay, so she didn't know anything about it. I'm thinking that's almost 2 years. The Davidson County tax assessor would have probably sent her a tax bill for 2020 or 2021 to her Los Angeles address, and she would have said, what is this? Because if I get a tax bill from an out-of-state agency, I'm going to throw it away. And if another one comes, I'm going to call them and say, what in the world is going on? And then you might find out, well, you just happen to own 2 houses now, or 1. How many coincidences are they allowed? And now we have the theory being floated around. And by the way, this goes into my theory. She's a 29-year-old, and from the pictures that I've seen at the Daily Mail and a few other places, she's not unattractive. So let me just run through a couple of these. They're saying he was paranoid, but is anybody that paranoid? We've got some fast facts that came out way too fast from Heavy. Here's my theory. All right, what was going on in the building? Allegedly, one of these data companies, I don't know if it was AT&T or somebody that leased space to, somebody with an adjoining office, was allegedly conducting forensic investigation into something we're not supposed to talk about here. Maybe this is where the proof was going to be put together more than it already has been that we're not supposed to talk about. So somebody obviously wanted to shut that down. We'll call them black hats. The black hats wanted to, stop, any evidence from coming out because, again, they have their narrative. Now, they don't want to, you expose themselves, and they have a lot of network availability. So they probably set this thing up in advance. Let's find a patsy. Let's find somebody that we can scapegoat. Now, we won't even be suspected, and we'll have him do it for what he thinks is his own reasons. So they find a really, really cute girl that has some connection to the area, and she goes on, I don't know, Tinder, finds this lonely old guy, and they research him. He might work. She gets him involved, thinking he's fighting the 5G revolution, and who knows, he might have gotten him high. He might have been the guy he might be the human remains that were found when this thing drove in. I've also, one of these stories has a video of the RV exploding. Thank God the police officer had just, gotten further away. I assume he's one of the ones that was injured. Thank God nobody was killed. Nothing in the audio recording, audio concerts, Hollywood makes no sense at all. So this guy's a patsy. he gets blown up. Some damage is done to the facility. Is anything stopped? No. If my theory is correct, the dark side of this equation just committed an act of war against who? Against the government on American soil. If that's not an enemy combatant, I don't know who is. It could have been somebody else. He might have quit claim the houses as a defense mechanism. They don't know I'm doing this. This will be my insurance policy in case something bad happens to me. Well, something bad might have happened. They might have had somebody else do it. It could have, might not have been a person in there. We don't know. We don't know anything. But again, look for this to just vanish, because it's no longer convenient. Because even the mainstream press, the Daily Mail, CNN, CBS, they're asking odd questions, and they're admitting this is a strange situation. The information that you'll find on 4chan, in this case, is better than it's still speculation, but then again, everything is speculation. AT&T got a contract to do a forensic audit on Dominion voting machines. I guess that was from a historic school board election in Michigan. I'm not sure about this. I comply with all policies for a little while longer. We got some ownership, blah, blah, blah. There's a reason why somebody might want to stop something from happening in that building. And, did they succeed? I mean, maybe this thing was carefully calculated. These are not entirely stupid people. The people that report on it are stupid, but the actors themselves are not. They know how much explosive force it takes to hit a 5-story building and not necessarily destroy it, but just cause enough shockwave to maybe knock over an IBM server and break it. Remember, these are the folks that have, forget the 5G, their media just told us last week one of their private companies has a satellite that can look through buildings and see things like, servers that are inside. So they know what they're doing. And they know how to do a pretty good job of covering it up. We've just got to hope that if any of this, what I'm thinking is true, that somebody was one step ahead of them. And we may know that today, tomorrow, Friday. We may never know it. We may know it January 20th or next year. Who knows? But here's a little reminder. The people that push all these hoaxes are really, really, really stupid. And it's amazing that so many people out in La La Land believe this stuff. Like I said, 40 years ago, school children would have laughed at it. Now, oh, well, it's on the television. I guess it must be true. Oh, well, I'll forget about it because they told me to. Stop watching television. Just don't participate. Vox Day had a little story that I immediately picked up on, and I remembered something about this. There's a company in and around Washington that specializes in books. It's a bookstore, but they don't really sell books to bibliophiles who like to read. They sell books to interior decorators, and they sell the books by the foot. Why? Well, because these people are hired by celebrities, media types, politicians, other idiots, to build impressive libraries, impressive looking, and they'll have them behind them or somewhere, in the house. Somebody comes over or watches a video, and you think, oh, that guy's got a lot of books. He must be really smart. Have never even looked at them. Never even looked at them. I remember there's a place called Second Story Books 20 years ago when I was going to Washington. I was aware of this. Our number one customer base are interior decorators buying books for people that want to look smart, but they aren't. They aren't at all. Let's move on. More of the year of the hoax. I got a pretty good, interesting essay from Global Research, just about, was this the year that all the big plans were put into motion? We've got a pandemic, vaccine, population control, lockdown, a manufactured economic crisis, and now we're coming up to the Great Reset that they now tell us doesn't exist, even though they've been planning it at Davos and celebrating that until we notice, and now we can't talk about it, which is why I don't, except for scientific or entertainment purposes, in accordance to all the guidelines that I have to, you people. Was this a dress rehearsal for something bigger? Archbishop Vigano, who appears to be legitimate and know what's going on, and he's not afraid to say what's going on, says, yeah, this is all starting to look like a general rehearsal for the establishment of the kingdom of the Antichrist. You don't get much of a stronger statement than that. Read the whole thing. I've got the link. Speaking of fake religion, Ann Barnhart has been all over the story of Jorge Bergoglio and the two popes situation in the Catholic Church for years. We now have fake Pope Bergoglio, there is no Pope Francis, pushing real eugenics. And this story is about, we've got this wonderful vaccine. Let's give it to all the young people of color all over the world first. Like Margaret Sanger would have told you to do back in the 20s or 30s. And then when we're done with all the young people of color, the poor ones, the ones that don't matter, the ones that we don't want to, exist, then we'll come and we'll target all the poor young white kids, and we'll just get rid of all. It'll just be the elite left. Take your policies and shove them. I just don't care. You people deserve to get it in next year when they're done with all this stuff. All this stuff, we have the AP's president-select Joe Biden. And, as bad as things are, America, the economy has collapsed. We've got the worst pandemic in history. We've got crazy people bombing telecom buildings because they're afraid of 5G, because they listen to nut jobs on the internet. It's horrible. The whole, we got Black Lives Matter and police shootings, and this has got to be the worst place that's ever existed. Well, why are they trying to get 2 million more incompatible foreigners rammed in immediately at the southern border? New York Post is asking this question. I don't think we have to worry about that happening under that administration, but 5,000 a day make it in anyway. So wall or no wall, begins to look, when people are bombing your cities, that's a war. When people are streaming across your borders by the thousands every day, that's an invasion. But nobody talks about this stuff. What we like to talk about are the good old days. The last word of today is nostalgia. And there's a little story from the Wall Street Journal that I read, and I wasn't quite sure what to think about it, because the guy who wrote it made really good points, and maybe some not so good points, or points I didn't agree with. But people are, I'm really bad about this, always thinking back to the good old days. And the story points out people of my generation tend to look back at the 70s and 80s and say, wow, that was really great. At that time, Happy Days was on television, which was helping the boomers and the older generations look back to the 50s. And study after study shows that most people alive today look back to the 1950s as the golden age of America. It was and it wasn't. People then were looking back to the 20s. People in the 20s were looking back to the 19th century, on and on. Nobody's ever really happy. The grass is always greener, or, in your memories. And the bottom line of the story was hopeful. So it's a good story. He's saying, look, tomorrow things are going to change again. People 50 years from now will look back at today and say, wow, can't we go back? Things change. The more things change, the more they stay the same. But the reason we tend to look back, especially to times when we were children, things were just happier then. Bad things were happening in the 50s, the 70s, the 80s. They always happen. But we remember the good things, and it's kind of psychosomatic. We create the memory that we want. I again, this is like drugs. I asked why is it that people, especially today, want to create a fake reality, a fake memory? It's the same reason they want to get drunk or high, because there are real problems, and nobody ever addresses those. In fact, certain outlets, platforms that look like publishers, have policies where you can't even discuss things. Now, I know you find that hard to believe, but it's true. Just think about it. Read these articles. I got to decide about this this top 10 of 2020. You'll see it if you see it. If not, we're moving on into the new year. It's going to be a great January, and hopefully that's just going to open up the gates to a great next 4 years. If not, we will keep on, and we're going to make our happy memories regardless. So we have somebody out there on the team not feeling that well. Hope you're feeling better. Hope everybody's feeling better. And I'll see you guys back tomorrow, which the calendar tells me is Wednesday. Have a great Tuesday. Parent love it.